I'm not checking my Facebook, I can assure you. I've just got my speech on my phone. I think we can all agree that my granny was a very talented lady. As my dad and my uncle have said, she played tennis and badminton well into her 80s. She enjoyed many a round of golf in the local area. She was one of the longest serving bridge players in Thurleston. And she would play all sorts of games like Scrabble, Rummikub, Machiavelli, Up and Down the Ladder, the list goes on. And I'd also add that without even trying, she would wipe the floor with all of us. Although one particular talent of my granny's that might not jump to the top of everybody's minds was her secret part-time job as a recruitment consultant. Now in my case, I've made a few career changes in my life so far. I graduated a languages degree and I chose to go abroad and teach English. I enjoyed the experience, but I told my granny teaching wasn't for me. Instead, I decided to study and become a translator. Now anyway, a while after making this decision, on the weekly Mackay quiz during the pandemic, Granny mentioned that she'd bumped into someone in the village. She said that this person knew somebody who worked as a translator in Spain and that he could get me a job. I'm not sure if this person is in the room, but... now naturally I was quite intrigued by this and I had a few questions. But I thought rather than take up the time in the quiz, I'd give her a call another time and ask my questions. So a few days later, I called Granny and asked her if she could tell me a bit more about it. But what struck me was odd was when I wanted to make sure this wasn't a teaching job, Granny was visibly really upset with me that I hadn't already called to find out. She said, "I've gone to a lot of trouble, the least you can do is call the number I've given you." Now anyway, rather than upset my elderly granny, I did some research and I called the number. And when I called the number, lo and behold, it had nothing to do with translating, and there was 0 job vacancies. Now even despite my unsuccessful attempt to get a job as a translator, we all know what a lovely quality it was of Rosemary's that she would go out of her way to help people and make them feel welcome. I know we're all going to miss her very much. Thank you.
So, for those who don't know me, my name's James and I'm Granny's favourite grandchild. Albeit self-proclaimed, but you know. But I've always had a different relationship with my granny, being the youngest and favourite. We always used to come down as a family most holidays, particularly Easter. But I always remember one time we came back and I received a letter in the post, and it was from Granny. So I opened it, and as a young child, and they're expecting it to be a present, maybe some money. But little did I know that as I opened it, it was actually a letter of her telling me off for my behaviour when I was down there. What might actually be perceived now as almost parental verbal abuse. So it was a bit disheartening to receive this. It's taken me at least 10 years to probably take on board some of Granny's points. But Granny, I know now, is particularly proud of my modesty when talking about what a lovely young man I've turned out to be. The first time I heard the word frugal was from Granny. Presumably it comes from her Scottish roots. Apologies to the Scots in the crowd in the back. But there are too many stories to mention about Granny being frugal. You take a look in her pantry and fridge and you see certain produce that food standards will have a heart attack over. Date life really wasn't a thing in the Mackay household, and in the Lyon household, as I was speaking with Sandy last night about Sister Jean. But she was frugal with herself, but so generous with others. One thing, however, with her passing that I'm glad I won't see again, is Dad and her fighting any time over who was going to pay. It's led to a few heated debates and people being in a strop, and thinking back now, I actually should have written a letter to Granny telling her off early. So my great memories from coming down to Devon every holiday aren't sadly to do with the lovely views, walks, all the people here. They're all to do with playing sports at the hotel, cards in Granny's sunroom, Scrabble, anything like that. It lit the flame of competitive spirit that I've got inside me. And Granny, as was mentioned, Granny didn't take any prisoners when she played either. So fortunately for the rest of us, if there is a silver lining of her not being with us anymore, is that someone else can at least win now. I just want to say that so my lovely girlfriend Charlotte has bought a memories book. So if everyone could just sign and put a few memories in that you've got of Granny, then that would be great. When we pass around, we can share it at the end. Do you want to pass over to my mum, who's going to read a poem written by my grandparents, who sadly couldn't be with us because they couldn't travel down and still.
Thank you. As James just introduced me, obviously I am the wife of Andy, Edwina. My parents have obviously been coming down to Thurleston for many years, and I know several of you know my parents and have welcomed them into your homes. As I say, they have been coming down for a long time, and they were sorry that they couldn't come. But my father always used to write limericks into Rosemary's birthday cards every year, as indeed Rosemary used to write little poems into all our birthday cards, which she did up until she was about 99, I think. Anyway, so this is my father's tribute, and this was in her 100th birthday card. Our dearly loved Rosemary is 100 today. That's a fantastic achievement, we really must say. The bells should be ringing in clear and good tone as we all think of her as the Queen of Thurlestone. We're introduced as the outlaws to some of her friends. We're proud of this title and it never offends. It's an honour to be a part of her clan, and we're proud to be listed as a long-time fan. She's the matriarch of her family and our family too. She always tells us what we should do. We always obey her, it is best we do say, or we'll never again be invited to stay. Her talents are many, an artist of skill. She plays cards with relish and beat you she will. A vociferous reader and still very able to pick up her iPad from under the table. She stopped playing tennis and having a swim as she felt her bikini made her look thin. But there's something she likes even more than ever, that's to welcome her friends, whatever the weather. So congratulations are due to have reached such an age. You've earned every second as we finish this page. We thank you for all the love that you've shown to we lucky folks who've shared you and your home. Thank you.
Well, being last on the block, there might be one or two duplications, but I have been asked to say one or two things about Rosemary with regard to for her friends, and I just hope I can do her some justice. Rosemary was one of the closest and dearest friends. Small in stature, came from Beaujolais stock and a wee canny Scot. She was a fighter, strong-willed, bloody-minded, feisty, intelligent, funny, caring, loved her tennis, badminton and walking. A great cook, artist, poet and stock car driver. We came down here approximately 16 years ago, and I think we sort of met Rosemary with that on hours of arrival. And shortly after that, she was giving us a drinks party, and we were invited there to be introduced to the local people. And I think from there on, we created a friendship. As time went by, I was playing golf and walking, and she approached me one day and asked me if I would take Bess for a walk. I think at that point, both Bess and Rosemary became a very integral part of our lives. And I always remember taking the dog for a walk the first time. and she said to me, "You don't need the lead, she's perfectly all right." Well, I went through the village and on the lead, and we went up to the fields and I let her loose, making sure there were no animals about. And proceeded down the 12th and the 11th, when all of a sudden a pheasant appeared. 3.5 hours later, after walking halfway down to Bantham, twice round the course, I was wondering what I was going to say to Rosemary as I was walking there with one lead in hand. When I arrived at the front door, who should be sat there wagging its tail but the dog. From that particular day onwards, she used to say to me, "You are taking the dog for a walk tomorrow, are you?" And for several years, I used to do this, leaning into the rain, thinking, this isn't even my dog. Whether we went up the road, down the road, we invariably passed the post office. And I don't know why it was, but the dog always wanted to do her motions outside the post office. This was difficult, especially when it was loose. There were times when Rosemary was performing in the kitchen, cooking or doing something, and to pick the dog up, I used to, the house was never locked, it was permanently open, whether she was in or out. But if she was in the kitchen, I would sneak in behind her and blow down her neck. And she used to say, "Don't do that!" Stamp her foot. And I always used to say to her, "Rosemary, it's purely for your blood pressure." As it's been stated, she was a very, very good cook. And she used to make the shortbreads and cakes and what have you. And I used to say, "When are you going to make me a fruit cake? I'll make you a fruit cake." And she did make me a fruit cake. But there were times when she made these shortbreads and she said, and we were talking about not wasting anything, she said, "I've made you these shortbreads." So I said, "Well, thank you very much." She said, "I burnt them, but you'll like them." In our earlier days, we used to have quite a few white knuckle rides. She used to pick us up from the station, and it was a small car with a little woman inside. And I think, in actual fact, she used to look through the steering wheel. And I must say, I was, although very grateful, very pleased to get out of the car. I come back to Stopcar driving, and in actual fact, and this has been mentioned, but on her last day, she took a few cars out in the Dalston car park, the hotel, and I said, "If you're going to do it right." And she took some fairly expensive cars out. And I said to her a few days later, I said, "You did very well there." And she had a certain smile, thinking, "Well, yes, last day, good job." I also mentioned that she was an artist and a poet, and our birthdays were in November, and she always used to paint me a birthday card with a poem inside. They were normally sarcastic and to the point. But as I say, she was a lovely person in that way, and we never forgot each other's birthdays. In her latter years, she wasn't too well, as we all know, and she said to me on 1 or 2 occasions, "I'm ready to go." And I said, "Don't be stupid, you'll be all right." And she was, and you would see her walking outside, doing this, that and the other. And she also took trips and falls, and she was battered and bruised and God knows what else. But again, she always used to laugh it off. I did mention bloody minded, because in actual fact, as she got sort of more frail, she needed a stick and an observer. But initially, she would always refuse to use these things. I remember walking or driving along Mead Lane one day, and she's in the middle of the road, leaning into the wind, stationary. She couldn't move forward, couldn't move backwards. She sort of got out of the car, picked her up, and took it back to her house. She also had some sort of operation on her eye, and she appeared at our house on this particular day with a pair of sunglasses on, well dressed, and I said to her, "You look like a Hollywood star." She said, "I know." So I said, "Well, are you going to show me?" She said, "No, I'm not." So anyway, she took the glasses off and she got 2 beautiful shiners. And again, she laughed it off. It's a sad time, but I was privileged to know Rosemary. And I think as a Yorkshireman, the only thing I can say is, lads and lasses, they don't make them like that anymore. Thank you.
I'm sure you're all hungry now, but just one last little note. Andy and I were going through the will a little while ago, and we found a little message inside, handwritten by my mum. And this is after she passed away, of course. And she said, in this little handwritten note, "Dear friends, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for showing me so much kindness, and thanks to everybody for all you have done, and for all these past memories. I love you one and all. Be kind to each other. Love from Rosemary."